God has replaced those lies with his truth. So this is like a little part of my redemption story in the context of what drives my behavior. As I share my story, as Shell mentioned, my hope is that you all will think about what drives your behavior and how you think God's redemption might manifest in your life. So, and the lies that I used to believe are related to sex and my self-worth. So, without further ado, let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm a recovering hoe. Or, when I'm feeling susical, I say, oh, sorry, I'm a hoe no mo. Now here at Crossroads, it's so true, I'm a hoe no mo. Here at Crossroads, we usually like to start off our messages with some sort of biblical reference. And in that tradition, I'd like to share the lyrics of a song that I believe is paraphrased from the book Song of Songs. And here they are. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were reading Song of Songs when they recorded that. Yeah. Something along those lines, anyway. Well, for some history, I'm going to share some facts about my sinking into some people what Song of Songs is about and what that song's about. Anyway, for some history, I'm going to share some facts about my hodom to show how the lies manifested in my life. First of all, I need to clarify that when I say I was a whore, I was never paid for sex. I didn't get paid with money, but I got paid with the illusion of worth. And I'm starting to get choked up already. I came to believe that to sexually please a man made me worthy of love. And that so consumed me that I started to believe that that a man would never love me for who I was or who I am. And I never considered myself a slut, but thank you, Michelle. Behind on my slides, by the way. Paid with the illusion of worth. And the man may never find me worthy of love. There we go. I'm up to speed now. So anyway, so I never considered myself a slut, but some people might if they knew that I've had over 50 lovers. Even with the guys I didn't love or even know, I felt a rush of worthiness that they wanted me and that I could, do something for them, or sometimes it was just a boost to my ego if I was horny and I went out to a bar with my friends and I set my sights on a guy and I could take him home, It was just, and then it didn't even stop at that. Then I would brag about it to my friends. I would say to my friends, it's like, did you see that guy I was talking to last night? Well, yeah, I took him home. And as if that was gonna, bring affirmation from my friends that I was worthy, and regarding my worthiness. So, because I was so consumed with proving I was worthy and I was desirable, that I just felt like bragging to my friends would help that. Hold on. Where am I now? There we go. So the first time I even considered that I might need healing in this area was during the first sex series that Crossroads did in 2005. And by this time I was married and no longer sleeping around. I'm completely loyal in relationships. I'm just a hoe outside of them. I had never addressed the lie behind my promiscuity. In that first sex series, Brian Wells gave this talk about, it was called What's the Big Deal? And Brian's message detailed out all the reasons people use to justify their behavior, their sexual behavior, or their attitudes about sex. But at the same time, he made sure that that grace was available for our actions, and that we were not the sum of our sexual resume, which for me was a really good news, considering my sexual resume. And he summarized what he had learned by some of these points. Let's see. He emphasized, the main thing he said was that nobody can separate body and soul, and he emphasized that having casual sex and sex outside of marriage results in ripping body and soul apart. When he said that, I thought about how that looked in my own life, and how, when I was, being a hoe, I was like, I would cling to sour relationships just because the sex was good and I didn't want to give it up. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, I would have complete indifference about waking up to some guy I hardly knew or didn't even care to know. So Brian went on to explain that God created sex to be wonderful and pleasurable. Oops, here's the next one. And that sex is the most beautiful expression of love and intimacy between a husband and wife. God wants to be included in that bond. So after Brian's message, I realized that my heart had become so hardened by repeated disappointment that I thought I could separate body and soul, because he just kept repeating it over and over again. And I was like, wow, I think that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to separate body and soul. And that's where my healing began, and I acknowledged that. So the first thing I did was, I confessed. I confessed to God about all the guys I had been with, and I confessed about, I went into detail with God, in my confession. I confessed about the times that I pressured guys into sex that maybe, weren't planning on doing that with me, and I would kind of seduce them or pressure them into it. I confessed all of that to God. The next thing I was able to do is I apologized to God for the ways, what's the next one? I apologized to God for the ways I denied how he created my body and soul in his image. So what do I mean by this? Well, giving my body to men for sex so easily was completely disregarding the tender loving care that God put into creating me and the beauty he intended for my soul. So to talk about that a little bit more, I'm going to share, Donna Miller wrote a book called Searching for God Knows What, and in that book, Don spends there's a chapter in that book called Naked, and spends most of that chapter breaking down the story of Adam and Eve into tiny bite-sized pieces, little tiny, teensy tiny bite-sized pieces. And he describes in detail his own revelations about their story. His biggest epiphany is that Adam, essentially, was a naturalist. These are not working. There we go. Adam was essentially a naturalist. And he comes to that conclusion after reading Genesis chapter 2. And in Genesis chapter 2, most people are familiar with this, but the way he broke it down gives it a whole new meaning. Because in Genesis chapter 2 it says, God tells Adam that he needs a helpmate, but it's not good for him to be alone. In the very next paragraph, he says that he sent Adam out to name the animals. And then it's after that paragraph that he creates Eve for Adam. So, and Don goes into great detail about how he comes to this conclusion and why, how he came up with 100 years. But basically, the way he describes it, you're like, yeah, that's pretty much what it says in the Bible. I mean, it's like, that's how it is. So